Good morning, everyone. It is 9 o'clock on Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. We're here in council chambers for the hearing examiner hearings, which I'm now calling to order. Before we start, I have a few preliminary comments. I'd like to introduce our process, which is a little bit different than that followed by other municipalities. The clerk will read the introduction to the case, and then we'll swear in anyone who is testifying. City staff testifies regarding compliance with public notice. If public notice has been found to have been accomplished properly, the case goes forward. Otherwise, we take another path. Once the public notice has been found to be complied with, the applicant goes first. The applicant is required to present an entire case under the city regulations. The city staff goes second and presents their case. Public comment is next. If you're here for public comment, please make your comments comprehensive, because once public comment is closed, it will not be reopened. The applicant then responds to questions and makes any final comments. Staff does the same, and then the hearing is concluded. If you have a cell phone with you today, please silence it or turn it off, and take any cell phone conversation outside the room if possible. If you wish to have private conversations, please move away from the speaker's lectern so we do not accidentally record those conversations. They become public record when recorded. Please come to the microphone if you have comments so that we can properly record your testimony. All testimony must be under oath. Members of the public are requested to go to the lectern on my left, your right, so as to record your comments properly. It has the same full video and audio capability as the microphone on the other next to it. Anyone who provides testimony other than the applicant and staff is requested to provide and fill out a public participation card so we can properly spell your name. If you wish a copy of the hearing examiner's recommendation or order, as the case may be, please provide your email contact information for that purpose. However, please also understand that once your email contact information has been provided, it does become public record. So with those preliminary comments, Madam Clerk, would you please call the first hearing? Thank you.
Case number PDP 23-000003, address 3103 Santa Barbara Place, applicant Reviving Homes LLC, care of Mark Dykes. Reviving Homes LLC is requesting a 10,800 square foot site, lots 5-6, block 1842, located at 3103-3105 Southwest Santa Barbara Place, be contracted or eliminated from the South Santa Barbara Plaza Planned Development Project, PDP. The South Santa Barbara Plaza project was approved by Ordinance 69-06 and was amended by Ordinance 1-11. This project includes a shopping center located at the intersection of Santa Barbara Boulevard and Southwest 31st Terrace. This application is consistent with criteria found in LDC Section 3.4.8.f, used to evaluate the contraction of one or more sites from a PDP. This request is also consistent with the comprehensive plan. Lots 5-6 are vacant, and the applicant intends to seek new entitlements for this site under the Land Development Code. The elimination of this site from the PDP will not impose any hardship on the remaining two property owners with land in this project. Any persons giving testimony today, if you are able, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We do need to have city staff testify first. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the
morning,
record,
Mr.
Mike Struve, Planning Team Coordinator with the Planning Division. Staff did notice this case, and that included placing an ad in the news press 10 days in advance of this hearing date, sending out letters to all surrounding property owners within 500 feet of the site, as well as all owners within the PDP project area, and then lastly, posting a couple of signs on the subject site 10 days in advance of the hearing date.
Thank you. I will find that proper notice was given. I also want to put on the record that I performed the site visit. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Charles Jones here on behalf of the applicant, Reviving Homes LLC. Just to give you some history on this property, the The property was, or is currently zoned commercial. I believe that the city is going through a process to change that from commercial to multifamily. So this property it abuts Southwest Santa Barbara Place on the western boundary line. To the south of it is a duplex. To the south of that duplex is another duplex. And to the north of the property is also a duplex. The original PDP that was applied for by Mr. Hinks required additional access to the commercial property that runs on Santa Barbara Boulevard. And this easement runs east and west right through the middle of this property. So what we're requesting the city do today is to remove that easement and to allow my client to build on it. Right now, with the easement going through the exact center of the property, it makes it unbuildable. We just can't do anything with it. So the intent is, after this hearing, assuming that the easement is vacated, that my client will apply for multifamily development on that property consistent with the other properties in the area. So my understanding that the development order for Mr. Hinks has expired. On that property up front, there was an alley that was on the eastern side of my client's property that was also vacated, and I believe that runs approximately 2 to 3 properties north. So the overall intent and goal of my client is to, again, build a property that's consistent with the area being a duplex. The city examiner has obviously not necessarily approved, but they have taken the position that this would be consistent with the city plan. So we're requesting not only that our request be granted, but consistent with the city, that we move forward with the project. Thank you.
Well, there are various criteria that need to be addressed. What some applicants like to do is, if you agree with the staff report, you would incorporate that into your presentation. Is that what you wish to do?
That's what I wish to do.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Thank you.
I have no questions, thank you. All right, Mr. Strube, thank you.
Good morning again, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, Mike Strube, Planning Team Coordinator for the Planning Division. And for the purposes of this hearing this morning, I would like to be, or I'm requesting to be recognized as an expert in land use planning based on my credentials on file with the City Clerk's office and my past testimony before you previously on similar matters.
I will find you as an expert regarding issues related to this hearing today based upon your CV on file with the clerk, and also based upon your prior testimony regarding issues that are similar to the issues in this matter today. Thank you.
Thank you. So this case involves a PDP amendment, and as we get into my presentation, I'll address any questions about the easement. We're not actually vacating an easement here, but I can answer any of those questions, and this will sort of involve a two-step process, and this amendment is the first of 2 steps. So you've already heard from Mr. Jones, who is representing the owner, Reviving Homes Incorporated. The request today, consistent with the application that was filed, is to eliminate or remove one site from an existing planned development project called the South Santa Barbara Plaza PDP. This site is located along Southwest Santa Barbara Place, and the area of the property is 10,800 square feet. This aerial map shows the South Santa Barbara Plaza project outlined in red. So there are 4 sites represented here, 3 owners involved in this PDP currently. The site on the east, which has frontage on Santa Barbara Boulevard, is developed as a commercial shopping center that is owned by Don Hinks. There are 3 other sites to the east of this site along Southwest Santa Barbara Place. Mr. Jones had already alluded to those. 2 of those sites are developed with duplexes, and they are owned by one property owner. And then the 3rd site, which is north of the two duplexes is owned by Mr. Jones's client, and that site is unimproved. And if you step back for a minute and look at surrounding uses, not only within 500 feet, but even more broadly than that, most surrounding uses consist of single-family homes and duplexes, as well as a number of scattered vacant sites in the area. The PDP project area has commercial zoning on the east side of the project. Again, that's the commercial shopping center, RML or multifamily residential zoning on the west side of the site, which includes the subject property. And then with 500 feet, the vast majority of sites have either single-family zoning, R1 zoning, or RML zoning, except for a couple sites directly to the south which have P zoning. A little bit of background on this case. The project was approved back in 2006 and then was amended in 2011. And when the project was amended in 2011, the project area expanded. The project originally consisted of that one site located along Santa Barbara Boulevard. The project was expanded to include those 6 lots to the west in 2011. Those lots were also rezoned to the commercial zoning district at that time. And then the 20-foot wide alleyway separating the east and west halves of the development was also vacated by that PDP amendment. More recently, the city has changed the land use or amended the land use of these 6 lots located along Southwest Santa Barbara Place from the commercial professional to the multifamily residential future land use classification, and then more recently followed that up with a rezoning from C to the RML zoning district earlier this year. So the request before you this morning is to eliminate one site, lots 5 and 6, from the current PDP. There are 4 standards that appear in the Land Development Code, and in particular section 3.4.8 that pertain to these types of requests. And I'm going to go over each standard here very briefly, and staff, as part of our analysis, has recommended findings for you to consider for each standard. So the first standard is the property that is controlled by the existing PDP development plan consists of more than one parcel or tract of land, which this PDP does, and all owners of at least one of the parcels or tracts of land applies for the amendment. So in this case, there are multiple parcels covered by this existing PDP. One owner, that is Reviving Homes, the owner of lots 5 and 6, have filed a PDP application requesting that their site be removed from this particular project. So staff finds that this particular criterion has been met. The second standard reads the party or parties making application for the amendment of the existing PDP development plan includes the party or parties which hold title to ownership of 100% of the property in the PDP project that is proposed to be eliminated or contracted from the existing PDP. And in this case, Reviving Homes is the sole owner of lots 5 and 6. There is no other entity that owns a portion of this site, so they own it in its entirety, and because of that, staff finds that this criterion has also been met. Third standard, the proposed amendment would not negatively affect the lawful existence of the existing PDP development plan as it related to the property that is continued to be controlled by such development plan and would not be included in the proposed amendment. So going back to 2011, when the PDP was last amended. At that time, the current owner of the project had acquired lots 5 and 6, and he had wanted to join those properties together. And the plan at that time was to develop some type of commercial project on those 6 lots and to provide parking for that commercial project, more than likely another smaller shopping center. After that project was amended a couple years later, that owner's plans apparently changed, and he decided to sell those 3 properties or those 6 lots. 2 of the sites were sold to one property owner. The third site was sold to Reviving Homes, LLC. So now these new owners have different plans for either redeveloping their sites or for maintaining their current sites. The PDP amendment before you is certainly supported by the existing owner who filed it. When we went to change the land use a couple of years ago, we heard from the other property owner, and they sent us an email in support of that change, indicating that they were interested in changing the land use, or they were supporting the city's effort to change the land use at that time from commercial professional to multifamily. The new owner's plans do not conflict with one another, as each intends to manage their sites independent of one another. In regards to the site owned by Reviving Homes, that site is not developed, so it is not needed to provide parking or stormwater or any other type of service for any of the other sites. So each of these sites do act independent of one another, and we envision will continue to act independent of one another. And for that reason, we find that this criterion has also been met. And then the last standard is the proposed amendment by contracting land from the PDP would not create a situation where a condition appearing in the development order would inordinately burden remaining property owners of the PDP by eliminating this requirement solely for the applicant. This particular amendment will not create a situation where a condition appearing in the development order will inordinately burden a remaining owner. There's not any outstanding, for example, transportation improvement condition that would require a lane to be widened or something like that, where each of the owners would share in the cost of that. Again, each property will operate independent of one another. Future development on lots 5 and 6 will comply with the applicable provisions of the Land Development Code if and when the owner of that site comes in to seek entitlements. So staff finds that this criterion has also been met. We've also looked at this request for consistency with the city comprehensive plan. We find it's consistent with a couple of different policies. The first is policy 1.15, and in particular table 1, and this table identifies various zoning districts that are consistent with specific future land use classifications. And this table shows that the RML zoning district is consistent with the multifamily future land use classification. Also within this policy, policy 1.15B, this subsection B provides policy language regarding the multifamily residential future land use classification. It establishes a maximum density of 25 dwelling units per acre, and there's language in this policy that permits residential development, which could include single-family homes, duplexes, and multifamily units. Staff finds that this request would be consistent with the guidance language that is in this particular policy. We do note, however, that while the future land use classification would allow a maximum of 25 dwelling units per acre, the actual RML zoning would only allow 16 dwelling units per acre. And for this particular site, because of its area, a maximum of 4 dwelling units would be supported on the site. Lastly, an element I don't think that we've cited before, we believe this request is also consistent with language in the city's property rights element, and in particular a couple of subsections here. Number 1, the right of a property owner to physically possess and control his or her interests in the property, including easements, leases, or mineral rights. And then secondly, the right of a property owner to use, maintain, develop, and improve his or her property for personal use or for the use of any other person subject to state law and local ordinances. In this case, removing this particular site from the PDP project area will provide the owner with flexibility in developing and managing their site without the constraints of the current development order that was adopted prior to their possession of this site. So staff finds that this request is consistent with this policy and the property rights element. We are recommending approval of this PDP amendment to eliminate or contract the subject site from the South Santa Barbara Plaza project. We've received one phone call that was just of an informational nature, someone wanting more information about the nature of the request. And I did want to just very briefly address the issue with the easement.
I was wondering about that because there seemed to be an inconsistency here.
So this has been a very long process, I think, for the owner to go through. The owner has indicated all along that they were interested in developing or selling to someone who wanted to develop their property with some type of residential use in mind. So the property originally had commercial professional land use and commercial zoning, and then it was encumbered by a development order, and it's also encumbered by an easement. So the city had changed the future land use classification of the site, followed it up with a rezoning, and now we are recommending that this property be eliminated from the planned development project. The easement that is located on this particular site is located right in the middle of the site, and that was a condition of approval that appeared in Ordinance 1-11 when this PDP was most recently amended. And the idea was at the time that since part of the alley, but not all of the alley, was vacated, a cross-access easement needed to be provided out to the local street to prevent the alley from dead-ending at the time. And that was considered pretty standard practice. Staff has gone back and re-examined that, and I think I included emails from our utility and fire and transportation reviewers, and we don't believe that that is necessary anymore. Why this easement cannot be vacated is because it is not a platted easement. It was a deeded easement to the city that the city accepted. So the easement can be removed, but that will require that easement to be released by the city council. So our intent would be that if the city council is inclined to approve this PDP amendment, that we would have the release of that easement ideally appear at the same city council meeting as this PDP amendment, and then both could be done roughly at the same time.
But that's not a quasi-judicial thing, that's a contractual or real estate matter, right?
It is done by ordinance, so I think it actually appears as a public hearing. It is not a ministerial act where, for example, it appears on the consent agenda.
I think our Assistant City Attorney is weighing in at this moment.
Hi, John McCleary, City Attorney's Office. The charter requires that the city, any conveyance of city interests in land, which releasing an easement would be, must be done by ordinance. So we'll do the best to track this PDP ordinance through the council at the same time with the proposed release of easement as well.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So we're not here today on the easement, in other words?
We are not here today on the easement, but we are aware that that's something that encumbers the applicant's property, and we are working towards solving that issue.
Well, the applicant's letter of intent, which is, I have before me, that was on November 28, 2022, revised February 12, 2023, while the subject matter is eliminate part or but not all the land from a previously approved PDP, addresses the easement issue primarily. Does that create any heartburn for staff that the letter of intent doesn't match the matter coming forward today?
It doesn't really, in our view, it doesn't create any issues for us because we have been very clear that they are interested in removing or contracting this land from the PDP. We have explained to the owner that the release of that easement is a separate process. So, and we've told the owner that as well too. So I don't see that particularly as being problematic just because that's not the way we would have written that letter of intent. We think it's very clear that they do want to contract this land, and that's the first, again, of a two-step process in this case.
I understand. Yes, sir.
Possibly appropriate for the applicant to speak to this matter?
I couldn't agree more. However, this is a public hearing, and we need to take public comment from the public, if there is any. So let me open public comment. Anyone who wishes to provide testimony or input in this matter today, please so signify. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the applicant. Mr. Jones, I have some questions for you. I wanted to see Mr. Struve's perspective on your request, but your request doesn't match what the staff has come forward with, so I need you to clarify for us.
Okay, yeah, I think the goal was to try to give you the overall process or our overall goal, which is to make that property buildable. This is one step of a multiple step process. So if I could, Ori Tennis motion to amend the application to reflect just the removal of the property from the PDP, I'd be more than willing to do that. Again, with the overall intent, we want to be clear. We just wanted to, tell the city of exactly what our plan was, and so that's the purpose of that letter. So, if need be, if we need to do an amendment to that, we can. But excuse me. Hopefully, our explanation today will clarify what we're looking to do.
I appreciate your Ori Tennis motion, which I will grant, but I don't have a problem. I don't think you need to resubmit. Obviously, staff has indicated this has been a long and laborious process, and I don't see any need to elongate it. But I just want to make it clear we are not here on the easement, and I have no jurisdiction on that. So.
Understood.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. All right. Anything else, Mr. Struve, or have you concluded your presentation?
I have nothing else, although I would like to request that my staff report be incorporated into my presentation.
Thank you very much. All right. I will recommend to City Council that the amendment go forward as requested with the indication that it does not concern the easement. It does concern the contraction as outlined in the staff report and outlined in the staff presentation and as accepted by the applicant's representative today on an Ori Tennis motion. And I will try to get the recommendation of the PDP hearing examiner recommendation out as quickly as possible. So thank you very much. All right. And that concludes this hearing. Let's move on to the second hearing. Madam Clerk, thank you.
Case number RZN 23-000001. Address, multiple addresses. Applicant, City of Cape Coral. The future land use classification of the land area contained in the rezone application was amended to multifamily. This request is a follow-up rezone. The rezone is a city-initiated request to change the zoning for 7 properties along Block 1006 from Commercial C to multifamily low RML. This rezone will align zoning and the future land use classification. Any persons giving testimony today, if you are able, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, Candace Ford, Associate Planner with the Planning Division here with the city. I am here to attest that the advertising for this case was completed. We did send mailers out to all property owners within 500 feet of the block. An ad was placed in the newspaper at least 10 days before the hearing, and they did post signs on site.
Thank you. I will find that proper notice was given. Thank you.
Okay. The applicant is going to be City of Cape Coral, so this is a city-initiated rezone to match the zoning with the amended future land use classification. There are multiple owners and multiple parcels, and those parcels are located west of Santa Barbara Boulevard and south of Nicholas Parkway. We're requesting to transition from commercial zoning currently to residential multifamily low or RML. The parcels in question were actually amended from CP to MF by Ordinance 78-21. And the sites in question are going to be up on the screen. There are 7 of them. 5 of them currently have duplexes. 2 of them are currently vacant. The assumption would be, if this rezone gets passed, that the 2 vacant lots would then probably have duplexes on them. The official zoning map, is on the left, and the future land use classification map is on the right. As you can see, they are inconsistent currently, so this is just a calibration request. There are 7 sites, and they are between 10,000 square feet to 13,304 square feet. As currently mentioned, 5 of the sites have duplexes. They all have frontage along Southeast First Place to the east and are adjacent to a 20-foot wide unimproved alley on the west. The block lacks frontage on a collector or arterial roadway and is surrounded primarily by residential development, making it a good candidate to switch over to RML zoning. In 2011, the subject parcels were rezoned from R3 to C1 by Ordinance 1611, and then as previously stated, the future land use classification was amended from CP to MF by Ordinance 7821. Okay, now we're going to go over the criteria listed in the LDC, and the first one is whether the proposed zoning district is consistent with the city comp plan. Yes, this is an alignment with the comp plan to change the zoning so it better reflects and matches the current future land use classification. Out of the 2 possible zonings to match the future land use, this one was the less intense one, so that's the recommendation. The second criteria is whether the full range of uses allowed in the proposed zoning will be compatible. They would be. Surrounding this current sites is a mixture of mostly single-family homes with some duplexes, and these are currently non-conforming uses since they do have the commercial zoning, so this calibration would align it so that they are no longer non-conforming. And whether number 3 is going to be whether the range of uses allowed in the proposed zoning district will be compatible with the existing and potential uses. It would be. Duplexes are allowable in RMN, and there are currently duplexes in that area, along with single family and some multifamily units. The sites already have duplexes on them as previously stated, so this would just be an alignment. Number 4 is whether the proposed zoning district will serve a community need or broader public purpose. It would address the need for more multifamily type housing development. While we understand that duplexes are not necessarily considered multifamily, it is different than the traditional single family residentials that's primarily located in Cape Coral, so this would be an alternative to that. The fifth criteria is whether the characteristics are suitable for the uses proposed. Yes, they would be. They already have duplexes, most of them. They're relatively small in size, and they are typically adjacent to single-family dwellings and other duplexes to the south. They could be converted over to a larger multifamily unit if, congregation of the sites was done with ownerships all matching, but that seems unlikely since they are all owned separately. Number 6 criteria-wise would be whether a zoning district other than the district requested will create fewer potential adverse impacts to existing uses in the surrounding area. Per policy 1.15 of the comp plan, the multifamily future land use designation has 2 zoning districts that would be consistent with it. It would be the RML, which is what we're proposing, or the RMM, which is the residential multifamily medium district. The RMM district would allow for greater density, so that's why we are recommending the RML. And it should also be noted that the RMM district requires a minimum size of 1 acre. None of these parcels individually meet that requirement. If they did kind of combine properties together under a single ownership, that might be possible, but that's not possible at this moment. And now we're going to review for the consistency of the proposed rezone with the comp plan. As noted, it is compatible with the policy 1.15, table 1. The RML district is compatible with the multifamily residential future land use code currently. And that would allow for a maximum density of up to 16 units per acre, which this would be under that, so it would meet that. Planning staff recommends approval of the rezone, and prior to this meeting, I did not receive any emails or phone calls inquiring about this case.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public who wish to provide input or testimony? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the applicant's representative. Anything else?
No, ma'am, that was all.
Okay, thank you. I will recommend that the rezone go forward as requested. I will attempt to get the recommendation out as quickly as possible. All right, thank you very much. That concludes our hearings for this morning. The date and time of the next hearing is Tuesday, April 4th, 2023 at 9 a.m. here in council chambers. We stand adjourned at 9:37 a.m. Thank you, everyone.